Hello, welcome to the overview of the tracking software system. From a high level, the system really consists of three main parts. There's a tag, and the tag is one of many different variations, but it's used to identify the asset or an inventory or a person if we're doing personnel type tracking. Second piece is what I'll call a scanner, but it's a device that basically reads the tag, converts the information into computer transactions. Then the third part is the database itself. And this is a number of different tables that collect the information and provide the various reports. So again, at a very high level, these are the main components. The point I want to make is that when we talk about the tag, regardless of the type of tag, they all basically function the same way. Same is true for the scanner. Regardless of the different type of equipment that you may purchase, the scanner effectively does the same thing, which is gather the information from the tag and then put it into the database. So having said that, let's look at some examples of tags. Tags can range from ID type tags like you see in the upper left corner, and they typically will have either a magnetic stripe or a barcode. In some cases, they'll have a chip implanted in those. All of those are forms of tags that can be read from some kind of mechanical device. Got a couple of barcodes, and they've been around a long time. So some tags may be made up of barcodes, and then you'll have equipment that will be able to scan those type of labels. At the bottom, there's a number of different kinds of RFID tags. With RFID, there are what we call active and passive. The active example is on the far right. It simply means that the tag is continually giving out a signal that scanners can pick up. The passive, all the ones to the left, scanner must read it and in some cases come in contact with it, but typically we'll have a fairly short distance in terms of being able to do the reading. So that's a tag. Some types of equipment, again, depending on the tag, we have barcode type readers at the top. Below that, we have a couple of different RFID readers. But in many cases, other devices can also be used. So there are tablets like in the upper right-hand corner, that's an industrial tablet, and it may have on it an RFID scanner, or it may have a barcode reader. But it also has possibly a touch screen where information can be manually put in the system. And again, depending on the kind of tracking you're doing, some combination of these different devices and different tags might be possible. With smartphones today in the lower right, a lot can be done with those, and they can serve as a reader for either manual input and or in some cases scanning input. Database, a third part of our system, is made up of many different tables. In our case, there are over 50 tables that are used in the tracking system. And I'll go over just a couple of them. Item master is if you have inventory or parts or you have assets, this is a master file where that information is set up. In the middle, a company master just ties back to companies that are involved in or part of the tracking. There may be personnel within a company that you wish to track. On the far right in the top is the contact master, and that's really where people records are kept. And I'll show you in one of the follow-on videos examples of how that information is stored and made available. Below the item is the location master, and this is where information like longitude, latitude might be kept. It could be where address, street address, zip code is kept. It may be a location name or a company name, or it could be a physical location within a warehouse. So the location master is just the way you set up the different places where information may be kept and where your assets may be stored. Content master is basically your tag master. So for every tag, regardless of what kind of tag you have, there will be master records for each and every unique tag. And then, of course, there'll be a number of different history masters where you keep details of what's happened over time relative to the tracking that you do. So if we look at the software tracking process, it starts with at the top any asset or inventory or person that you want to track will have a tag or a badge. Then some data capture device or scanning device will be used in order to create transactions and find where tags are located. The software is updated, and there's different ways that that software can be updated. For example, in some cases, you'll have a scanner, hand scanner. As you scan, immediately that information is taken and updated in a database. In some cases, you'll have devices, scanners, that will actually collect the information, and then at a later point, it'll be imported into the server database. Or there's something called cron or automatic jobs, and those are situations where there's a never-ending program that's always running, and for different devices that are doing scanning, it's continually reading them and continually updating the database with no human having to be involved with that process. So each of these are different forms of updating a database, and all three of them can be used in certain situations depending on what your needs are. And we talked about the content record. This is basically the tag record. In it, typically you'll have one or more forms of how you characterize the information in that database. For example, you may have a serial number. You could have a separate asset tag. You might have an RFID tag. All three of these are kind of clones. If you use any one of these, you'll get to the record, to the same record that has these particular elements. There'll be some kind of an item ID, and that just refers to the asset or the person or the inventory that asset tag is associated with. Of course, you'll have some kind of location ID that tells you where the asset that you are tracking is located at any one point. To the right of that, there's a lot of different transactions. A typical transaction is a move or a find or a lookup, but there can be many, many different kinds of transactions depending on what it is you're tracking. So if you're tracking inventory, the transactions that could increase considerably, where you might have quantity updates or quality hold on certain inventory items. And again, there are many different transaction types that are in this tracking system. And lastly, the where, as I mentioned, that's the longitude and latitude that can tie to a mapping application. You may have physical addresses with zip codes. It may refer to a project or a warehouse. So this is a basic tracking system. Again, it's obviously a lot more complicated than this, but from a high level, this is essentially how a tracking system operates. Now the software itself has many different features. It's configuration based, which simply means it's set up with the idea that customization will be required by many users. So depending on what it is that you wish to track and depending on the fields of information that you wish to track in the system, it can be easily configured. The menu that is in the system is either a classic menu or it can be icon based or it could be a combination of those. And you'll see in the demonstrations in the follow-on slides some examples of each. Screen selection. Typically when we're doing demos, we will show you a very full screen with lots of different fields on it. We do that to show you some of the capability, and then if there are fields that you as a business don't need, those are simply eliminated from the screen. So we simplify the screen when it's configured for a customer so that only the fields that are of interest will show up on the screens. There's over 300 different functions, different things that you can do with the system, and again, these are set up with permissions so that some portion of these can be done by the different users, and each user could have different functions that they're allowed to do. And then lastly, when we look at the reports, they're usually in view form, or if you choose, you can print them, or you can export them to Excel as an example. So depending again on the needs, the reports are available in all three formats. So these are